Welcome to our second episode of Unhidden Podcast. I am Drew Smith, and I am joined here today by my co-host, Lorena Morales, who she's playing the role of guest today because we are talking all about Lorena and her journey to her diagnosis. So thank you for sharing, Lorena. We really appreciate it. I appreciate you being so open today and being willing to share your experience. So, we're going to get right into it. So tell me, first off, we're going to keep it really easy. Tell me, when did you get your diagnosis? How long ago did you get your diagnosis?
It was, I believe, March 2021. So still COVID. It's still kind of like the COVID years. It's been a wild kind of roller coaster, but I'm happy to go through it with you today. And it's funny that we're kind of changing roles today, and I want to be the guest for this second episode. It was March 2021, still COVID years.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you got your diagnosis?
I was, thank God I'm not in math. That was what, like 4 years ago? 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Yeah, so I was 33. I was 33.
Okay, so, adult diagnosis. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Now, did you proactively seek a diagnosis for autism, or was the diagnosis like, it came as a result of something else?
The latter. It was a result of something else. I didn't, which is funny because, I guess we're going to go really deep into it. It's funny because I did work I was running the marketing department for autism services company a few years ago. And so I was very, very close to the condition, and I was helping marketing it through like a wild audience, and I was interacting with parents, dealing with that with their kids, with sisters, with aunts, with grandfathers, grandmothers, and it was very funny when I got the diagnosis. I was like, wait, this is why I felt so related to the work that I was doing a few years ago. But without knowing, right? Like I knew the diagnosis, I knew the condition, because I don't like to call it a disease. I know a lot of people think that it's kind of like a disease. For me, it's simply like a condition, right? I was so close to it without knowing how close I was to it, if it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, again, we're getting deep into things here. So if I ask something you're not too comfortable answering, just let me know. But so your diagnosis, you didn't seek an autism diagnosis. You got diagnosed with autism unrelated to autism itself. What were you? Tell me kind of like how did you build up to this diagnosis? Like, what were you getting diagnosed for that turned into autism, and what kind of like made you go down this path?
I like to call it a nice coincidence in life, right? My sister becomes a mother in what was it? Like, I think it was 2018, a little before COVID. And so and now she has 2 kids, both on the spectrum, different levels, but both on the spectrum. And then when the oldest one, her and her husband started to see certain behaviors, and so they pursue an active kind of answer on what's going on with my kid. And so little did they know it was autism, right? And so when she had his diagnosis, she calls me one day and she's like, I recognize a lot of, because my sister and I, we were very close when I was little, right? Like I like to think like she had a lot of my mother in her, and my mother is the one that saved me, quote unquote. And so she's an identical copy in personality and everything. So when I was little, she kind of knew. And so she tells me like, his name is Luca, my nephew. And she's like, Luki is obsessed with time. And I have a deep obsession with time. Like one of my tattoos is precisely like a watch. She's like, he stares at it very weirdly, just kind of like you. And he has this extra sensitivity in his hands. Now, of course, his diagnosis is an entirely different story than mine. Anyways, that's what kind of, she told me like, could you be even interested in asking, just ask the question. And I was like, well, at that time, I was back with my psychiatrist. I've always been with a psychiatrist for different reasons. But I was already like not a therapist, but a psychiatrist. And so I brought the conversation to him, and he told me, that's funny. I just didn't know you wanted to pursue this way, like to have an official diagnosis. But every time that I hear two masters specialized in this thing, hyper focused on this thing, I know there's something. And so he told me, do you want me to send you like the tests? It's like a bunch, and probably you know this already, of course. It's like a million questions that you have to be answering. And so he sent them over, and just like that, my next session with him was, it is, we don't call it anymore Asperger's because he decided to do something really bad, but it is what we could know now as level 3, right? Which is you're fully functional, you don't require support. And that is quote unquote, because I think I did require, now that I know better, probably in my younger years, I could have used more support. It's just, you just don't know, and your parents don't know, and they work with what they have in that moment, right? And so that was kind of the story. I didn't know, if it wasn't for my sister, I would still be thinking I'm just the weird person that has extra sensitivity with the sheets in my bed, right?
That is so interesting. So you got your diagnosis because your nephew got diagnosed, and your sister recognized these similarities and these, I'm going to call them idiosyncrasies that you have, that she saw in your nephew as well, her son. And I was like, this is you. You've got to go get diagnosed for this. Yeah. That is super interesting.
Yeah, it was wild. I also did it. The COVID hit many people very differently. I think it was 2-3 years that were very sensitive for a lot of families, and there was a lot of pain for a lot of families as well. I thought, for me, COVID was very kind and very nice. And the moment that they said, you don't have to go to an office anymore, I was jumping over the roof. I was like, thank God I don't have to see people anymore. So I think what it created on me, it was more a sense like the moment that when my psychiatrist told me it was almost like validation that some of the things in my head were not wrong, right? There was a few tears here and there because you just don't know what to do at the very beginning. You just don't know if it's a good thing, if you should communicate it, if you should. I was already dating now she's my wife, but she was my girlfriend at that time. And there was like a million other things that I was going through, including my immigration situation. So it was like an avalanche of things that I was like, holy mother of God, what do I do with this thing? It's almost like a stamp, right? Like this is true, this is real. So yeah.
What were some of the emotions that you felt when, in the first couple of days after getting your diagnosis? How did you feel about it?
I think confusion, of course. But I think it was also a relief, almost. I felt that I was entitled to use my voice more, to give me permission myself of many things that probably I didn't do in the past. I felt a lot of curiosity to understand how I made it, right? Like, how is it possible with this? It was a limitation for a lot of years in my life. I used to have a stutter when I came to the US. I think now everything is related to the same, right? It was that. It was a lot of, yes, now life makes more sense. But it also came with a lot more work, right? Because when you know something and you have more information than X or than Y, your responsibility is to now make informed decisions, rather than in the past you're just going ignorant around your world and your life and everything about it. And the most surprising thing that now it has become a topic to work with my psychiatrist is career-wise. How is this thing, and I think this is why you and I, Drew, started this whole podcast, how this little thing that it's not that little has either helped you or being a wall for you and your development.
Yeah, I mean, and I know that we're going to talk about my journey in the next episode, but I feel a lot of that same stuff that you just expressed there. What were some of the, you know, when I got my diagnosis, I had all these aha moments where I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. What were some of your aha moments where you got your diagnosis and you're like, oh, that totally tracks?
A lot of them had to be uncovered. So a lot of them, most of them came from when I was a kid, right? Like I had this obsession with bird feathers. And as they would fall, or I would fall them in, I would find them in the street, or for example, my parents' bed quilt was of feathers, and the pillows as well. So I would kind of take them out one by one, and I had this thing on my fingers until today. Like if I find a feather, it's super weird, it's super random. But now I understand that I had extra sensitivity in like these fingers, right? And for me, it was my calming mode on auto-regulate myself. So those little things, for example, I didn't know, because also when you live with a partner, that's the moment where a lot of the things come up. Because if you always live by yourself, which is my case, I mean, I live with my siblings, but you have your own room, you have your own space, so not necessarily things are showing fully. Then in San Francisco, I never had roommates, I lived by myself. And when I met Veronica, I understood that her world was different than mine. Like an example is like the sheets. There's a part of the sheet that I can't allow myself to be touched with my face. There's all these little things. I remember this story that it makes her go crazy of laughing. When she met me, I've always taken care of myself, like physically. And so I was doing a smoothie in, the NutriBullet cup. And so I didn't know this was not normal, but I counted the blueberries that were on my smoothie. And so, but that was the exact space in the small cup of the smoothie, right? And so she, without thinking, she kind of grabbed my cup and she was making her own smoothie. And I went crazy because there were like two sizes, and I lost it. Because I was like, no, it doesn't make sense. Like if I do it in the bigger one, because the amount of berries that I count are not gonna fit. And it was like this entire thing where she was like, what's going on? Like this is something. And then I saw that I count a lot, but I never said it out loud because I didn't know people didn't count, right? Like these things that you just go through life and you think it's your own, your own way of understanding the world. And then when you meet someone else, it's like, no, you're the only one doing that, So
I'll tell you right now, I have stairs in my house, and every time I go up and down the stairs, I count the number of steps every single time. Yeah. It doesn't change. It's the same number of steps every time, but I have to count it. And it's not OCD. It's absolutely not OCD. It's just, I count things just like you.
Exactly. And I knew it was no OCD because, for example, my desk, it's not super, I don't care about for example, the spices in my kitchen being in a certain order. I don't care about those things. I don't have OCD, I know that. But there are things that, like there's a piece of art in my house. I know exactly how many heads are in that piece of art, right? So I guess those were the things that showed me and showed her. It showed her to ask every time, like, are you having one moment, or do you need to explain something to me so I understand better your world? And I think having someone that is patient now as an adult has been vital for my success.
So when you look back at some of the challenges that you faced in life because of your diagnosis, and obviously not being diagnosed and not getting support from a younger age,
Yeah.
what are some of the challenges that you faced in life that you can attribute back to your diagnosis?
Everything around it. Because funny enough, I choose marketing as a career, which is one of the most social careers by nature, right? From history of history. I chose it because I realized my story is that I was in product design, which is something that I'm fascinated by. I didn't know how to sell anything, so I thought marketing was a way to get into the consumer's brain, which it is. But I didn't know it came with events and being the spokesperson and being the face of the company, which I was more than twice, pretty much in every single company, right? And so it was really a challenge to be in meetings, to be in those things. So that's kind of career-wise. But then also socially, I think I really struggled with friendships when I was a kid. I didn't really have a friend until I was probably like late, like 16, maybe. I had like probably someone to talk to, but like friendships as we understand them as adults, I didn't have a lot of those. And I even remember my father took me to lunch one day and I was already in college. And he went for me and he was like, I'm worried that you don't have many friends. And for them, it was funny because I come from a very, very social family. Both my father and my mother, at least when they were young, they were this, the impersonation of a butterfly. It's both of them, right? Like many friends, many, very talkative, and I was always a kid that didn't talk in family events, that didn't want to be with the aunt or with the whatever. I was in my corner by myself, probably counting something. And so he worried, and one of my biggest struggles in life, I'm going to be super vulnerable here, my biggest fear was if my parents die and they think that I'm alone, what am I going to do, right? Like, I don't want them to go with that impression. And even more after I came to San Francisco by myself, I think for me it wasn't that hard because I did have friends at that moment already, but I've always been very good at being by myself. So making the jump to come to another country to relearn everything, it was the biggest challenge in my life, but I knew I could do it because I knew myself very well. And so that was kind of like the biggest problem for me. The social aspect of things was always very difficult. And having my sister, which again, she's very, very social. Someone very close to me once told me, if you don't, if people don't like you, you're going to have it really hard. And so fast forward, I think my psychiatrist now tells me, you're the master of masking because you have understood exactly how to look at people, how to move your head, how to move your hands. The practice that I had and the teacher that I had without knowing was the best out there. And I think that's what makes me outstanding in what I do today.
Since you've had your diagnosis, and I know that you mentioned that you've got a psychiatrist that you work with, have you started getting more support? And how is your kind of like, how would you compare Lorena pre-diagnosis to Lorena post-diagnosis?
I have a bunch of frameworks. right now that help me. And I guess I'm not shy to ask for help any longer. But the journey, again, it wasn't easy because a lot of solutions, especially in the United States, have to do with medication. And in the world, I guess. And so I absolutely adore my psychiatrist, and I think he has saved me in many ways that he probably doesn't even know. But the first solution was, well, we have to medicate you, right? Like, we'll put you in some help. And so he did, and it was a terrible journey. It didn't go well for me. Like, I had to go through probably 6 medications, and the health system in the U.S., it's so bad that it was just a nightmare. Like, the first medication, and I know it's an entire process where they have to find the medication, adjust the doses, all of that, and it's a very slow one. And so the first one, I remember I used to wake up like all wet on sweat for the amount of sweat that I was having at night. And then the second one, my jaw was really hard. My hands were shaking. So it was a really uncomfortable journey. And then by the time that we found the right medication and the right doses, I was very aware of my surroundings, and I was very calm. I barely had anxiety. So I think it was a beautiful, I believe in medicine, by the way. Like, I'm pro. Like, if you need something to get along on the way, freaking do it. But my situation was very specific and very hard because the moment that we found the right doses and the medication, my insurance stopped covering. Like, my company changed insurances that year. And so when I changed the insurance, then it was not covered anymore. And we were talking about like $800 per month. And so it became something that I was like, I don't think I can expense it from my own pocket. And so I left all types of medications. So currently I am not medicated of anything. So I had to find my way through frameworks that are more practical and behavioral rather than the prescription. And so, like, for example, I have a rock that now goes with me in every single top moment. And so I think that's what we're going to cover in the podcast in the next episodes. But yeah, I found more behavioral frameworks that work for me.
Okay, tell me about the rock. I got to know more about the rock. The rock comes with you, and how does it help you?
It's a relatively new thing. Since I told you that I have extra sensitivity in the hands, I recognize that when I'm about to have a tough conversation, since I was very, very little, I cry automatically, right? Because I feel a lot. And so the rock helps me break the physical sensation where the tear is going to come and then focus on the texture. And that really helps me because I feel things with my hands more than any other human. Right? So now that I know that, if I'm gonna be in a difficult situation, I try to bring it with me. And so small things like that have absolutely changed my perspective of how to go in the day by day.
So I'm going to ask one last question about the rock, and then we'll move on. Is it like a polished, smooth rock? So it's like nice and like a soft, smooth texture, or like what's the...
It is, but it does have like one line here that it's deeper. So like just at the touch, it's a different sensation. So that's everything about the rock.
Okay. All right. You know what? I'm a fan of like anything that helps, right? Like it bringing a rock with you somewhere might seem bizarre to somebody that's neurotypical, but I feel like those of us that have diagnoses, we all have our own things that bring us comfort and calm us down. And so I'm a big fan of like, if you find something that works for you, great. I don't care if it's a rock. I don't care if it's feathers, whatever it is, just keep doing it because it works for you.
Right. Exactly. And it doesn't have to be like this is the newest thing, right, that I found. But in the past, I used to scratch my cheek. That's why I have a scar here. But then I recognize, now that I know, I was damaging my body at the end, so that was not a good solution. And so I had to follow my way, like the chain. And I know a lot of people have like and then they call it anxiety or like a tic. But for me, it's that moment where I have to connect with something else in order to avoid the thing that I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I do a thing where I play with my beard all the time, like particularly right here. I'll like, if there's enough hair here, I'll like twist it into almost like a braid and then let it untwist itself. Like and it's a texture thing for my hands. So I get it. I've got my things too. So, so after getting your diagnosis and you've been through, you know, medication, and you've gone through and learned a bunch of frameworks, do you find that you are better equipped to walk around in a neurotypical world than you were before your diagnosis?
I think it comes and goes. I think it's waves of saying, yes, absolutely. And then there are other days that I'm like, as much as I do my due diligence, the reality is that the world is not prepared for non-typical or neurodivergent humans, unfortunately. And I keep seeing it, and I am lucky enough, for example, that professionally I have people on field marketing, for example, which is one of the toughest pieces of my job. And I keep having the conversations of, if you are in a power position, we need to start moving things around. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I'm in a bubble, right? Because my wife knows, she accepts it, she works towards it, because it's not only accepting it, like she needs to work with me on a daily basis, and I have to work with her. So I think that's on top another layer of any other marriage. I live in San Francisco, where like there's resources for disabilities in general. I'm not saying that autism is a disability, even though like we're gonna get into those conversations later. But what I'm saying is San Francisco has resources. I'm in a job where I have explained this to my boss and my previous boss, and I've been very vocal about it. But I know that's not the case for everyone else, and that makes me sad. And I also know that my diagnosis has allowed me to function by myself in this life. I recognize that that's not all phases of autism. I've seen now very closely the phases that are not that functional and that are very tough on the families and are very tough on the reality that they live.
So if you had to go back and do it again, would you get your diagnosis again, or would you skip the diagnosis?
I believe in information. I'm an evergreen learner. For God's sake, at some point I even knew a lot about crypto. I didn't become a millionaire, unfortunately, but I think information is power. And the more that you have, especially about yourself, which I think most individuals don't spend enough time with themselves, the better you can present yourself to the world. In any relationship, it can be work relationship, it can be with your friends, it can be with your partner, it can be with your siblings. I believe that the more you know, the more you can tweak little things in order to have healthier relationships in life.
Please tell me you didn't buy a Bored Ape.
A what?
A Bored Ape? You know those NFT cartoon monkeys?
Oh my God, no, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Good, good.
No, we're good there. No. That's hilarious. No. So that's part of the journey. I'm happy that you made me go this direction, and I hope people are finding some level of not only understanding, but probably like some of them can relate, right, to our stories.
Well, and I think that's part of the key here, is because like I know most folks that are identified as autistic or on the spectrum, or however you want to refer to it, most folks get diagnosed when they're younger. whether it's, as kids or teenagers, and there just isn't and there isn't a large vocal community of people that were diagnosed as adults.
Yeah.
And so part of, what we're trying to do here is build that community. So, I think hopefully people are hearing this and things are resonating and going, oh my gosh, I totally get that. That sounds like me. There was another question I wanted to ask real quick though, is when you think about your diagnosis and when in life you got your diagnosis, do you find yourself wishing or thinking back and going, man, I wish I had gotten diagnosed when I was 12 or 15 or 8 or something like that? Do you have any, like, and obviously we can't change the past, so I'm not going to use the word regret. But like, do you ever find yourself thinking like, I wish I had gotten diagnosed earlier?
Not really. No. I was fortunate enough to have a fairly happy childhood, and we'll cover that when it comes. I had the rough side of the stick. I had the small stick when I was little. I was bullied. I was like, there's a million things, but at least I am grateful that my early years in life happened in the century that I was lived in, right? Because I see social media today. I have nieces that are, the bullying doesn't end, right? Like for me, I was lucky that anything that happened at school had a cut and a very clear cutoff. And then I could get home and I did have a safe place and a safe environment. So I think even with an early diagnosis, I think what made me understand what I needed socially was precisely that my parents didn't know. And so they forced me at some point, right? Like I remember my father used to tell me, you need to look me in the eyes. I come from a very powerful male figure. And he's also tall and very dark beard and like very deep voice. And so this character of a father that can be a little intimidating or a lot. And he used to tell me like, look me into the eyes, and he used to force me, right? I didn't know it was a thing that I didn't do. Today, not anymore because now I'm very good at it. But at the very beginning, I remember my first computer work here in San Francisco. I had a Post-it that said, look into the camera, look into the eyes. And there were all these things that I learned, thank God, to be better. So now imagine if my parents could have knew, I don't think I would have the life that I have now. So it's like everything in life. Your path is exactly what made who you are today, and you don't have to justify it. And if you change a piece of that equation, then the entire equation changes. If I would have loved to be more supportive towards others or be more kind towards others, the way that I know now, today I understand patience. Today I understand tact. Today I understand holding someone's hand. That's what I wish I had better when I was younger, because probably I could have had better relationships and probably I could have had more impact in people. But as you said, there's no going back. So what I try to do is I am very intentional today with my friendships, with my spouse, with my family. Sometimes it's hard because you think it's the people that know you better, but then at the end, they don't end up knowing you that well, if that makes sense. Or not the intricacies that you were describing. Like they know some from your early years, but then when you develop as an adult, especially with a diagnosis, and you take ownership on that development, I think the story changes. And I struggle sometimes to communicate the differences that have happened in my life in the past 15 years.
Yeah. How have you handled telling people about your diagnosis? Because obviously, This isn't something you've lived with your entire life. This is something that's new. There's people that are already in your life. There's people that you meet. How have you handled sharing that information with people in your life?
I have categories. I have decided to develop categories because people are still mean, right? Like there are some really mean people, and that I need to, every single time that I meet someone new in any situation, I need to decide in that moment if I want to be the person educating them. And a lot of the times the answer is no. That's not my job in life. A lot of the times that answer is yes. I would like this person to be an ally to me and to my people, to my community. So I guess it depends. If it's, I don't think I have trouble with people, all the people that knew me, my friends, I don't have a problem. But I think the single thing that hasn't changed in anyone, people that I know or not know, or family or not family, is they have a hard time now believing it, because their own impressions of what is autism and the version that they see of me today, right? On a person that is in podcasts, a person that is in a Fortune 200 company, in a leadership position, and like all these things, it almost feels like they are disconnected from a diagnosis of this type. But then if it's, I've struggled, and I'm sure we can cover this in another episode, but I've struggled a lot in places like airports, just in general, because I've always believed that an airport is a place where people show the worst part of themselves, because it's a situation and it's an ecosystem that it's so not controlled and it's so uncertain and it's so stressful for a lot of people that naturally just people take out the worst version. And I've cried a few times over my last flight, simply because I didn't know now I have to be the person that shows it. I think it's this dichotomy of people saying, no se te, in Spanish is no se te nota. Like you couldn't tell. Like you couldn't tell. You move perfectly well. You speak perfectly well. You smile. You have, and so now I'm actually on the side. I'm also building a brand around that, around the you couldn't tell. So again, to your question, I think it depends on the category. Family, there has been a few members that I've been more comfortable, simply because I think they are more aware of what is autism. But in general, I guess I don't advertise it, but I'm also not uncomfortable if someone tells me, because I want to make sure that I bring awareness to neurodiversity.
Yeah, I there's such a massive difference in how autism actually presents versus how people think of autism presenting. Mm-hmm. Because most people, when they hear autism, they think of the people that are most deeply impacted by it. Yeah. They don't think about the people that they sit next to at work, every day, or that they're sitting next to on a plane or sitting next to at a restaurant, that have a lesser version and can present as neurotypical, even though behind the scenes they're, they may be melting down or really struggling with something, but they present as neurotypical. And so I think that there's a lot of education and awareness that needs to happen around what autism, how autism presents differently in different people, as opposed to just this, the main presentation of the people that are most deeply impacted.
Or the other way around, where Hollywood has made us think that autism is this little cute geek doctor that has autism, but that is brilliant and that is just cute, right? Nothing about autism is cute. Nothing.
Don't get me started on the superpower thing, where like in Hollywood, where it's like, well, autism's a superpower, you can do this, and it's like, it's not. Let's not do that. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I want to know more about that, but I think we're going to cover in the next episode, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Well, Lorena, those are the questions I had for you. So, what I'll do is I'll just kind of leave it open. Is there anything that any questions that I haven't asked that I should have asked, or anything that you wanted to share with the audience that we haven't talked about yet about your journey to your diagnosis and how it's impacted your life, and just anything else you want to share?
I think I want to leave every episode with a little bit of a reminder. And I think the biggest one for me is be kind to yourself. Even if you have to remind it to the little version of yourself at 5 or at 11. Remember that little kid or that little girl that she needs to be kind to herself as well. And so I think you made great questions, and I think this is the first time that I tell the full story publicly about my diagnosis, and so nothing but gratefulness. Thank you, Drew.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I know it's a deeply personal topic, and I think that that's part of what this podcast is about, is getting deeply personal and sharing experiences. So thank you for being so open and candid.
Of course, stay tuned for the next episode.
Yes. All right. Next episode, the roles are going to be flipped, and Lorena is going to be the host, and I'm going to be sharing my journey to my diagnosis. So, that may be interesting. It may not be interesting. Who knows? But that's going to be our next episode. So thank you all for listening, and we hope you join in. We hope you subscribe and follow us and continue being engaged with us.
Thank you, everyone. Ciao, ciao.